Good day, everyone. Welcome to Real Conservative News. I'm your host, Nathaniel Rajkumar. Starting off locally here in Trinidad and Tobago. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service says it fully supports the use of body-worn cameras and has already begun the procurement process, inviting firms to express interest in supplying the technology as part of a broader push to modernizing policing. Even though it was cancelled last year, there was an order made already, but it was too expensive, too costly. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, because they're facing pushback from we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, something that Andy Williams and the Ground Report used to do in the past, and I hope Andy Williams will take a stronger stance at this point in time. I'm proud of him at this still. I listened to him this morning a little bit on the Ground Report, and he isn't falling for the PR stunts like with the TTPS using their buses to be able to transport people due to the maxi taxi boycott and protest. He isn't falling for that PR stunt. But you need to do more, Andy Williams. You need to stand up with the people who are protesting for justice at this point in time. Even if you end up losing your contract with the radio station, it will be worth it, Andy Williams. You already have your following. You have your YouTube channel. Try to get it monetized. I don't think it is monetized. Try to get it monetized. Abide by the guidelines and get it monetized. Andy Williams, you do not need any government or any radio station in order to be able to stand up for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Getting back to the report, in a statement yesterday, the TTPS sought to make clear it is not opposed to body cameras, describing them as an essential tool for professional, transparent, and accountable policing. You wasn't hearing them talking like that all the time, you know? All of a sudden, they're talking like that. My response, I wonder why the UNC and TTPS waited until the masses began to cry out for justice before making this public statement. How convenient, yeah? How convenient. Isn't that strange? Something wrong, as I like to say. Something wrong. How can we believe anything they promise now? How do we know that evidence wouldn't be concealed or even destroyed in order to protect their precious rough men? Is the same police officers that are recording it on the body cameras going to be putting that evidence into the police system? So we may never end up seeing it. Unlike when Ian Allen obtains evidence from a private citizen, a phone or a security camera, and he releases it into the public, we get to see what actually happened. That's the difference. That's the difference, people. And yet we have politicians who don't like when Ian Allen releases that important evidence into the public domain. I'm telling you, Kamala made a huge error appointing certain individuals into powerful positions in her party. If these criminals could have attempted to deceive the public into believing that Kaya shot at cops through the side window when we all saw that it exited the front windscreen, right? How do we know that we the people will ever view unedited versions of police altercations with other civilians? How would we know? Bear in mind, people, that I fully support the mandating of body cams. I've been advocating that for a long time. And I've been saying that it will benefit both the police officers and the citizens of the country. Because sometimes, yes, there are false allegations being made against police officers, and therefore they will be able to use the camera footage to verify their claims. But, so getting back to what I was saying there. So bear in mind that I fully support the mandating of body cams to be worn by police officers while on duty, but as long as crooked cops, corrupt cops, are in charge of that law enforcement agency, we won't be able to regain any trust or confidence in the justice system because, as I just explained, they can edit the videos, people. They can edit it. Or they can just say, we are going to keep that evidence for during the court case. Which shows a lot of the times guilt, You put it into the public domain, people could start to make commentary on it and stuff like that, like what took place with the Kaya Sealy and Joshua Sambro case. So the TTPS will be most of the times now concealing that evidence until presenting it in court. So the public will never really get a chance to make any sort of contribution or give their opinion upon what they saw or on what they saw in the video. You understand what is going on, people? I fully support the mandating, and in this report here, we didn't hear anything about mandating the wearing of body cameras, and that is what is most important, because they want to leave them with the option They're not going to wait sometimes, or they're not going to turn it on or turn it on while they have encountered or they are encountering a civilian. And that's what is important. It must be mandated that they wear the body cameras and turn it on when they're interacting with civilians. Because let's just say that you have a case where an officer or officers have encountered a criminal, a so-called criminal, a suspect, and they didn't end up turning on their body cameras, and the person ended up dying. And the police officers say, we feared for our lives because he aimed at us, and we feared for our lives, so we returned fire. But there's no body camera, there's no camera footage to verify their claims. And they will say, well, we forgot to turn on the body camera. Yeah. What is supposed to take place, if it's mandated, is that they are suspended without pay and also end up losing their jobs, especially if they are found guilty of murdering that individual. Well, they need to face time in prison for sure, and therefore, of course, lose their jobs as well. But let's just say, before I go on to our next news report, another topic, let's just say that no one ended up dying, but it's a case where it was police brutality or false arrest. What's supposed to take place is, if these officers continue to make those so-called mistakes, they should still lose their jobs, even though no one lost their life. You understand what I'm talking about? Suspension at first, and if they continue to make those errors, then fire them. And in cases of like police brutality, they should still end up facing some time in prison. That is what needs to take place, people. And I don't think that this government is willing to put any sort of laws in place to ensure that the police officers are held accountable for their actions. Seven murders occurred over a 12-hour period yesterday, including one in Faizabad, 2 in Penal, 3 in St. Madeleine, and 1 in Mova. Yes, people. SOE, you know. And the government and the TTPS talking about how all crime going down. Yeah, I've said it over and over again. You cannot, and many other individuals, Michaela Pandey has said it, you cannot govern a nation and try to use an SOE in order to control crime. Crime is a long-term issue, people. A long-term issue, and it cannot continue to suspend the constitutional rights of civilians to privacy in their homes. And also, you cannot continue to be holding people in custody without evidence. It is unconstitutional what is taking place. We are coming a dictatorship and a police state. And yet crime continues. The gangs continue their turf wars. People continue to die on a daily basis. This nonsense needs to stop. My response, I won't be surprised if the TTPS and UNC attempt to blame protesters and artists for the sudden rise in crime. I wouldn't be surprised if they say, well, you know, this is all because of what taking place recently. Everybody trying to, you know, demonize the TTPS, and people starting to get more hyper and starting to try to make the government look bad. Jed. Same thing with PNM Patriots used to say it when PNM was in power. Now the UNC Patriots saying it too. Everybody trying to make the government look bad. Jed. I tell you, the hypocrisy is something I cannot cope with. Queen Cams fails to understand that you cannot solve TNT's crime crisis via an SOE. It will never work. And once again, as I said before, it is unconstitutional. You're making our country into a dictatorship. You're going to govern the country for the next 4 years using an SOE so that police could continue to invade people's homes without a warrant. The incompetent and extrajudicial TTPS needs to be reformed so that effective and legal investigations can be conducted in order to solve crimes. That is what you need to focus on. Queen Kamala. The detection rate in the TTPS, the police officers' ability in order to be able to conduct proper and effective investigations to solve crimes, not taking the law into their own hands. Your rough men, Kamala said that, Kamala said rough men. Your rough men, bullies in blue, are only good at drinking rum, parking illegally, using obscene language in public, and committing extrajudicial justice. I will add extortion as well, drug pushing as well, They control a lot of the drug blocks in Trinidad and Tobago. Don't get me wrong, that is not all the police officers. Most officers are bullies for sure. Almost all police officers park illegally for sure. But it's only a few that are actually involved in these serious crimes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against police. I want police to be conducted themselves in a lawful manner. That is what I want. I want a reformed and a proper, legitimate police service, and we don't have that at this point in time. Having said that, gang culture, normalization, and the widespread use of the drug weed in our communities needs to stop as well. This is not just about the government. This is not just about the TTPS. We have a culture in Trinidad and Tobago that is growing, whereby crime is glorified. We have a whole culture of crime, and that needs to be addressed as well. And one of the ways to address that is by banning the glorification of gang culture in public places and on our airwaves. Stop wheeling and selecting and running the tune again. Wheeling and selector, wheel selector and running the tune again. All these songs that promote gang rivalry, drug usage, and also turf wars. It needs to stop, people. It needs to stop.
Weather report for Tuesday, June 2, 2026, Trinidad and Tobago. On Tuesday, June 2, 2026, Trinidad and Tobago will experience partly cloudy to cloudy conditions with a high temperature of 30 degrees Celsius to 32 degrees Celsius and a low of 23 degrees Celsius to 26 degrees Celsius. According to the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service, the day will feature hazy and breezy intervals occasionally interrupted by isolated showers. A mild to moderate concentration of Saharan dust remains present in the atmosphere. Individuals with respiratory sensitivities should take necessary health precautions. Moderate easterly winds will average around 7 to 11 miles per hour, though conditions may become gusty near passing showers. Expect sticky conditions with humidity levels peaking near 85% in the early morning and hovering around 70% during the afternoon.
Regional news now. Convicted serial killer Kemar Thompson, whose bloody 2014 crime spree claimed 8 lives in 3 separate incidents across St. Catherine in Jamaica, will remain behind bars for at least 66 years and 7 months before parole considerations. In other words, he ain't coming out ever. This follows the dismissal by the Court of Appeal of his challenge to the sentence imposed by the Home Circuit Court, which he argued was manifestly excessive. You kill 8 people and more, but excessive? My response, that devil didn't consider it to be excessive when he took the lives of 8 innocent victims back in 2014. Capital punishment needs to be resumed throughout the entire Caribbean. He shouldn't even be spending 60 years or 60, how much years? Let's see. 66 years in prison wasting taxpayers' dollars. That capital punishment should have been used in this case. International news now. President Trump is criticizing Pope Leo for hosting Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson at the Vatican. Someone should explain to the Pope that the mayor of Chicago is useless, Trump wrote after photos emerged of the meeting between the Chicago-born Pope and the mayor. Trump also used the post to reiterate his position that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and Trump is 100% correct about that. You cannot give people who continue to publicly chant death to Israel and death to America nuclear weapons. You just can't give them that, because they're going to use it against those countries and other countries as well, against so-called infidels. You all have to understand here in Trinidad and Tobago and across the Caribbean that these extremists, these radical jihadists, they believe that it's their duty to usher in the coming of their Messiah, and the only way to do that is to wage war against the infidels. You cannot allow these kind of individuals to get their hands on nuclear weapons, people. You just can't. Trump also used the post to reiterate his position that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Trump's comment also came after months of tension between the president and the pontiff over Pope Leo's criticism of the administration's hardline immigration policies and foreign policy. That Pope Leo, telling you, you gotta keep watching him, man. Remember, we are in the end times, and one of these individuals will end up being the false prophet who will stand with, side by side with, the man of sin called the Antichrist. The U.S. military has quietly coordinated the safe passage of about 70 commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz over the past 3 weeks, according to U.S. officials. Most vessels traveled with their tracking systems turned off and followed routes away from Iran's coastline to reduce the risk of drone or missile attacks. Now, that is good news. And that is something that I could applaud the U.S. and the Trump administration for doing. Definitely, that is wonderful. In some other good news, a targeted assassination of an IRGC terrorist member took place last night in Andi-Sheh, Tehran. It's the first in Iran since the April ceasefire began. According to Israeli media, IRGC General Vahid Hakan, who was responsible for satellite contracts between the IRIB and the IRGC-linked Qatam al-Anbiya, has been eliminated in Tehran, Iran. One less terrorist to have to deal with. In my opinion, that is wonderful news. Well done, Israel. Well done for continuing to stand up for your own rights and telling Trump plainly, listen, you can have how much ceasefire you want. If it is Hezbollah starts to cross the line again, we are going to react, we are going to act, and we are going to act in a very significant and effective, powerful way.
Bible quote of the day. Philippians 4:6-8. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Folks, that brings us to the end of today's news report. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support my content. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed and stay safe, most of all. In Jesus' name.